At 5 years old, she sat alone outside a glowing restaurant, clutching an empty cup as warmth laughed behind glass. One man stopped. One choice changed everything. This is the night a child learned she belonged, and a city learned what kindness looks like when someone refuses to look away forever. Snow drifted gently along the Seattle waterfront, soft enough to look beautiful, sharp enough to hurt if you stayed too long. Strings of golden lights hung above the sidewalk, reflected in glass buildings and polished windows, promising warmth to anyone lucky enough to be inside. 5-year-old Elia Moore sat on a wooden bench just beyond that promise. Her feet didn't reach the ground. They hovered, swinging slightly, not in play, but in quiet uncertainty. She wore a thin lavender dress beneath an oversized gray cardigan, the kind meant to last through many winters, but now too tired to keep the cold away. Her hands clutched an empty paper cup. There was nothing written on it. It wasn't for asking. It was simply something to hold. Behind the glass doors of Harbor and Pine, laughter bloomed and faded. Silver trays passed by. Coats were shrugged off. A child Elia's age was lifted easily into her father's arms, her pink scarf bouncing as they stepped inside. The doors closed again. Elia looked down at her shoes. One lace had come loose. Her stomach tightened, a dull ache she recognized well. She pressed her palm against it, as if asking it to wait. "I'm okay," she whispered, though no one had asked. Snow settled into her hair, melting slowly. Elia didn't brush it away. She watched the light spill onto the sidewalk each time the door opened, warm and bright, then disappear again, like it had never been meant for her. She didn't cry. Crying took energy. After a long moment, Elia slid off the bench. The wood creaked softly behind her. She stood very still, drawing in a breath much bigger than her chest. Then, with careful steps, she walked toward the door. The closer Elia got, the warmer the air felt. Every time the door opened, heat rushed out, brushing her cheeks, before vanishing again. The smell followed, something buttery, something rich. Her fingers curled tighter around the empty cup as she stopped just before the velvet rope. She tilted her head up. The hostess noticed her immediately. Her smile was professional, practiced, gentle, in a way that didn't invite questions. "Hi there, sweetheart," the woman said softly, stepping into Elia's path. "You can't be here." Elia swallowed. Her voice was small but steady. "Please," she said. "I'm really cold." The hostess glanced down at her cardigan, her shoes the cup. Not unkindly, just efficiently. "This is private dining," she replied. "You need to go home." Elia nodded quickly. "I won't be loud," she promised. "I'll just stand. Just for a minute." The hostess hesitated only a second, then turned as another couple arrived behind Elia, laughing, stamping snow from their boots. The smile brightened, widened, redirected. "Welcome in," the hostess said, stepping aside. The door closed. Elia stood frozen, not from the cold this time, from something heavier. She backed away slowly, the lights blurring as tears rose uninvited. She blinked hard, refusing them space. Crying wouldn't help. Crying never did. She returned to the bench and curled inward, pulling her knees close. Snow dusted her sleeves. Inside the restaurant, glasses clinked. Someone laughed loudly, joy spilling freely where it was already warm. Elia rested her chin on her knees and stared at the ground. After a while, she whispered the words that had landed inside her chest, heavy and confusing. "They said I don't belong." Time passed in a way Elia couldn't measure. A man hurried by, speaking into his phone. A group of friends posed for photos beneath the lights. No one looked down. Elia watched boots and hems and swinging bags move past her like she was part of the sidewalk itself. Across the street, a little girl about her age skipped toward the restaurant, her hand wrapped tightly in her mother's. Her coat was puffy and bright red, the zipper pulled all the way to her chin. The girl laughed loud and unafraid. Elia watched them disappear inside. She pulled her cardigan tighter, shrinking just a little. The word belong echoed again. She didn't know exactly what it meant, only how it felt when it was missing. Snow gathered on the bench beside her. Elia traced a small line in it, with her finger then another. She drew a house, a door, a window with light inside. Somewhere behind her a car slowed. Black paint, quiet engine, headlights cutting softly through the falling snow. The door opened, releasing a pocket of warmth into the night. A man stepped out, a tall, neatly dressed, his coat buttoned against the cold. He paused, keys still in his hand. He had plans waiting, a table reserved, people expecting him. But he didn't look toward the door. He looked at the bench, at the little girl sitting there silent, holding an empty cup like it mattered. The man crossed the sidewalk and lowered himself to her height, careful, unhurried. "Hey," he said gently. Elia looked up, startled. Adults usually told her to move. This one didn't. The man crouched down slowly, careful not to tower over her. Up close, Elia noticed his coat smelled faintly of cold air and something clean like soap. He didn't reach for her, didn't ask her to move. He stayed exactly where he was, at her level, as if that mattered. "Hi," he said again, softer this time. "I'm Adrian." Elia blinked. Grown-ups usually didn't give their names first. She looked down at the empty cup in her hands, then back up. "Elia," she replied. "That's a nice name," Adrian said. He meant it. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Snow settled on his shoulders. He didn't brush it off. "How long have you been sitting here, Elia?" he asked. She shrugged, since the lights turned on. Adrian glanced up at the strings of gold above them, then back at her. Her nose was pink from the cold. Her fingers curled tightly around the cup like it might float away if she let go. "Are you waiting for someone?" he asked gently. Elia shook her head. "My mom's working. Does she know you're here?" Elia nodded quickly. She said to stay close. "I did." She gestured to the bench, proud in a quiet way. Adrian felt something tighten in his chest. Not panic, not anger. Recognition. He followed Elia's gaze to the restaurant doors, glowing behind them. "Did you try to go inside?" he asked. Elia hesitated, then nodded. "Just to warm up." And Adrian asked, already knowing. "They said—" Her voice faltered. She swallowed and finished anyway. "They said I don't belong." The words landed between them, heavy but calm. Adrian didn't react right away. He stayed very still, as if any sudden movement might scare them both. "I'm really glad you told me," he said finally. Elia studied his face, searching for the moment he would tell her what to do. He didn't. Adrian had heard many things in his life. Numbers, deadlines, promises spoken too fast to mean much. But "I don't belong," that was different. For a split second, the waterfront disappeared. He was 8 again, standing in a grocery store aisle with his mother, counting coins on her palm. He remembered wishing he didn't exist for a moment, just so she wouldn't have to choose between bread and milk. He looked back at Elia. She was 5, sitting alone, managing herself with the kind of quiet bravery children should never need. Adrian removed one glove and held it out. "Your hands must be freezing," he said. Elia hesitated, then slipped her small fingers inside. The glove was too big, swallowing her hand completely. Her shoulders relaxed before she could stop them. "That's better," Adrian said. She nodded. "It's warm." Adrian stood. The decision had already made itself. "You're not staying out here," he said calmly. Elia looked up at him, uncertain. "Am I in trouble?" "No," he said immediately. "Not at all." She considered this. "Are you going to tell me to move?" "No," Adrian replied. "I'm going to make sure you're warm." She glanced at the restaurant again, then back at him. "Inside?" she asked. Adrian shook his head gently. "Not that door." He extended his hand, not pulling, not rushing. Elia stared at it for a long moment. Trust wasn't something she gave easily. Finally, she placed her hand in his. It fit even inside the glove. Elia expected chandeliers. She expected white tablecloths and people turning to stare. Instead, Adrian guided her toward the black car waiting quietly at the curb. She slowed, confusion tugging at her face. "Aren't we going inside?" she asked. Adrian opened the back door. Warm air spilled out, wrapping around her legs, her hands, her chest. "Not there," he said, "but I'm not leaving you cold." Elia climbed in, carefully perching on the edge of the seat, as if afraid it might vanish. The door closed with a soft click, sealing the warmth inside. For the first time that night, she exhaled. The car pulled away. Through the window, Elia watched the restaurant shrink, its golden lights blurring into something distant. She wasn't sure why her throat felt tight. Adrian glanced at her through the mirror. "You okay?" She nodded. "It's quiet." "That's allowed," he said. They drove for a moment without speaking. Snow streaked past the windows like slow-moving stars. "What's your favorite food?" Adrian asked. Elia frowned, thinking hard like it mattered. "Grilled cheese," she said, "and soup." Adrian smiled just a little. "That's a very good answer." The car descended into an underground garage beneath a glass tower. Elia's eyes widened. "This is where you live?" she asked. "For tonight," Adrian said, opening her door and offering his hand again. "Come on." As they stepped inside, Elia didn't know it yet, but the cold had already begun to lose. The elevator rose quietly. Elia stood very still, her hands folded in front of her, like she was afraid to touch the walls. The numbers blinked upward, one floor at a time. She watched them carefully, as if counting might keep everything steady. "It's high," she murmured. Adrian smiled softly. "It looks bigger from the outside." When the doors opened, warmth greeted them again, gentler this time. Adrian's apartment stretched wide and bright, floor-to-ceiling windows revealing the snowy city below. Lights dotted the skyline like scattered stars. Elia stopped just inside the doorway. Her mouth opened slightly. "It's really shiny," she whispered. Adrian hung his coat and scarf. "You can sit wherever you like," he said, nodding toward the sofa. "I'm going to make us something to eat." Elia nodded, then carefully chose the far edge of the couch. She sat with her feet tucked beneath her hands, still folded. She didn't lean back. She watched. Adrian moved through the kitchen without rushing, washing his hands, rolling up his sleeves, pulling out a pan. Butter melted slowly, filling the room with a warm, familiar smell that made Elia's chest ache in a way she didn't yet have words for. She hugged her knees. No one told her to hurry. No one told her to be quiet. Outside the window, snow drifted past the glass. Inside the apartment felt calm, like it was holding its breath just for her. Adrian placed the tray gently on the coffee table. 2 grilled cheese sandwiches cut into neat triangles. 2 bowls of tomato soup, steam curling upward like something alive. Elia stared. "For me?" she asked. "All yours," Adrian said, sitting across from her. "And if you want more, we can make more." She reached out slowly, half expecting the food to disappear. When it didn't, she picked up a sandwich and took a careful bite. Her shoulders dropped. The warmth spread from her hands to her chest, then deeper still. For a moment, Elia wasn't cold. She wasn't waiting. She wasn't invisible. She was just a 5-year-old eating dinner. Adrian didn't speak. Some moments needed space. Elia dipped the sandwich into the soup the way she liked, her movements growing more confident with each bite. She ate slowly, at first pausing between mouthfuls, listening for instructions that never came. Soon the bowl was empty. Crumbs dotted the plate. She leaned back, slightly sleepy and full. "It's really good," she said. "I'm glad," Adrian replied. After a quiet moment, he asked, "Does your mom know where you are right now?" Elia's eyes flicked up, then down. "She's working," she said. "At the diner. She said she'd be late." Adrian nodded. "You shouldn't be outside alone." I know, Aaliyah said quickly, guilt rushing in. Then softer, the truth slipped out. The heater stopped working at home. Adrian felt the words settle into place. I was hungry, she added. I thought maybe someone would help. You did the right thing, Adrian said gently. But we're going to call her now. She's probably worried. Aaliyah nodded, already yawning. Aaliyah curled up on the sofa under a soft throw blanket, the oversized glove still on one hand. Her eyes fluttered closed as Adrian stepped into the hallway with his phone. He dialed the number Elia had recited from memory. Once. Twice. No answer. On the fourth ring, a tired voice broke through. Hello, Adrian exhaled slowly. Ma'am, my name is Adrian Vale. I'm calling about your daughter, Elia. Silence followed, sharp and terrifying. My daughter, the woman repeated, panic rising instantly. Is she hurt? No, Adrian said firmly. She's safe. She's warm. She's eaten. She's with me. A shaky breath escaped on the other end of the line. Oh my God. Adrian returned to the living room and knelt beside the sofa. Elia, he whispered. Her lashes fluttered. Mama, she murmured. I'm here, baby, her mother's voice cracked through the phone. I'm coming right now. Elia smiled faintly and drifted back to sleep. Adrian finished the call quietly, assuring her mother again and again that Elia was safe. When he hung up, the apartment felt different, less empty, more alive. He sat in the chair across from the sofa, watching Elia's chest rise and fall. Outside, the city continued as it always did, cars passing, lights glowing, people unaware. Inside, time slowed. For the first time in years, Adrian realized the dinner he'd missed didn't matter at all. And something in his chest told him this night, this simple choice to stop, was only the beginning. The knock came sooner than Adrian expected. Not loud, not desperate, just quick, restrained, like someone trying very hard not to panic. Adrian opened the door to find Nora Moore, snow clinging to her coat, her breath uneven from rushing. Her eyes darted past him, immediately searching. Elia, she breathed. Adrian stepped aside. She's right here. Nora crossed the room in seconds and dropped to her knees beside the sofa. She brushed Elia's hair back gently, as if touching too hard might make her disappear. Elia, baby. Elia stirred, her lashes fluttering. Mama, she whispered. Nora pulled her into her arms, holding her tightly but carefully. Relief washed over her face, followed quickly by tears she hadn't allowed herself all night. She rocked slightly, whispering apologies into Elia's hair, words meant for herself more than anyone else. Adrian stood nearby, silent, giving them space. After a moment, Nora looked up at him. Her voice trembled. Thank you, she said. I don't even know how to thank you. You don't have to, Adrian replied. I just couldn't leave her out there. Nora swallowed hard. People walked past her, she said quietly. Nobody stopped. I was working late because the heater broke. I thought I was doing the right thing. Adrian shook his head slowly. You didn't do anything wrong. She looked unconvinced. Shame flickered behind her eyes, an expression Adrian recognized instantly. You stayed, he continued. You worked. You came as fast as you could. She's clearly loved. Nora hugged Elia closer, nodding, though the guilt didn't vanish all at once. They sat like that for a moment, not awkward, just heavy with understanding. Elia's breathing evened out again, sleep reclaiming her gently. Nora glanced around the apartment, suddenly aware of where she was. We should go, she said softly. I don't want to intrude. Adrian nodded. Of course. But let me take you home. She hesitated. You've already done enough. Adrian didn't argue. He just said, I need to know you're safe. After a long pause, exhaustion won. Nora nodded. The city looked different from inside the car. Quieter. Softer. Snow blurred the streetlights into long, glowing lines. Elia slept soundly in Nora's arms, Her small body finally relaxed, the oversized glove still loose on one hand. Nora stared out the window, watching the world slide past. "You didn't have to drive us," she said quietly. "I wanted to," Adrian replied. "I need to know you both get home safely." Something in his tone, steady certain, made it hard to argue. They turned into a quieter neighborhood, where the snow hadn't been fully cleared. Old brick buildings lined the street, their steps worn smooth by decades of use. "I work double shifts," Nora said suddenly, the words spilling out like she'd been holding them in all night. "I leave Elia with neighbors when I can. Tonight I couldn't. I thought it would be okay." Adrian didn't interrupt. "She's never done anything like this before," Nora added. "She's a good kid. Too good. Kids shouldn't have to be brave," Adrian said quietly. "They should be protected." The car stopped in front of a narrow building with chipped steps and a flickering porch light. Adrian got out first, circling around to open Nora's door. Cold rushed in again, but he blocked the wind with his body as she stepped out. "This is us," Nora said. He walked them to the entrance, not rushing, making sure she didn't slip on the icy steps. Inside, the hallway smelled faintly of damp concrete. A single bulb buzzed overhead. Nora unlocked the apartment door and paused. "Thank you," she said again, softer this time. Most people wouldn't have stopped. Adrian met her eyes. Someone should have. Inside, the apartment was small but neat. A thin mattress lay against one wall, a worn but clean blanket folded carefully on top. Elia sighed in her sleep, curling instinctively toward warmth that wasn't there. Adrian noticed the radiator immediately. Adrian crouched beside the radiator and touched it lightly. "Cold. Still no heat?" he asked. Nora hesitated. "Not since last week. The landlord keeps saying he'll fix it. That's not safe." Adrian said, his voice firm, not at her, but at the situation. "We'll manage," Nora replied quickly. "We always do." Adrian straightened slowly. "You shouldn't have to manage this." She crossed her arms defensively. "I work hard. I do everything I can." "I know," Adrian said. He lowered his voice, making sure it carried respect, not pity. "You didn't fail her. The circumstances failed you." Silence filled the room, heavy but honest. Adrian pulled out his phone. "I'm calling a licensed repair service. They'll be here first thing in the morning. I'll cover it." Nora's eyes widened. "No, I can't accept that." "This isn't charity," Adrian said calmly. "It's basic safety. Heat isn't a luxury." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. Exhaustion finally won. She sat on the edge of the mattress, rubbing her face. "I hate feeling like this," she whispered. "Like I can't do it on my own." Adrian softened. "Doing it on your own doesn't mean doing it alone." Nora looked at Elia, then back at Adrian. After a long moment, she nodded. "Okay," she said quietly. "Just this." Adrian smiled, not triumphantly, but with relief. Elia stirred slightly, murmuring something unintelligible. Nora tucked the blanket around her shoulders. "I'll check in tomorrow," Adrian said. "If that's all right." "It is," Nora replied. As Adrian stepped back into the hallway, the cold didn't feel quite as sharp. Something had changed. Morning arrived quietly. No dramatic knock. No speeches. Just the low rumble of a truck pulling up outside before sunrise. Nora woke to the sound before she fully realized what it meant. For a brief, disorienting second, panic tightened in her chest. Another bill, another problem. Then memory caught up. The call. The promise. She pulled on a sweater and opened the door. A repair technician stood in the hallway with a clipboard, his breath fogging slightly in the cold air. "Licensed heating service," he said. "We're here for the radiator." Nora nodded, too stunned to answer properly, and stepped aside. Behind her, Elia stirred on the mattress, rubbing her eyes. "Mom," she murmured. "It's okay, sweetheart," Nora said softly. "Go back to sleep." But Elia sat up anyway, watching curiously as the technician knelt beside the radiator tools clinking softly. She hugged the blanket around her shoulders, her gaze serious, thoughtful. The work didn't take long. Pipes were checked, a valve replaced. A quiet hum followed, tentative at first, then steady. The radiator clicked once, then again. Warmth began to creep into the room. Elia slid off the mattress and patted closer in her socks, pressing her hands gently against the metal. Her eyes widened. "It's warm," she said, awe threading her voice. "Mom, it's really warm." Nora covered her mouth. She hadn't realized how tightly she'd been holding herself together until that sound, the hum of heat, unraveled her completely. Tears spilled freely now, quiet and unashamed. She turned away embarrassed, but the technician pretended not to notice. Outside, another knock came. This time, grocery bags, simple things. Bread, soup, milk, oatmeal, fruit. Nothing extravagant, nothing that felt like a statement. Adrian stood just inside the doorway, coat unbuttoned, coffee in one hand. "I didn't want to guess too much," he said gently. "Just the basics." Nora nodded, overwhelmed. "Thank you for being thoughtful." Adrian shrugged lightly. "Everyone deserves dignity." Elia sat at the small table, drawing with a stubby pencil. She slid the paper toward Adrian. It showed 3 figures beneath falling snow. One tall, one medium, one small. Adrian smiled. "Is that us?" Elia nodded. "You came when it was cold." Nora watched from the doorway, something loosening inside her chest. This wasn't rescue. This was follow-through. Adrian didn't stay long. He never did. He lingered just enough to be present, not enough to overwhelm. When he left, he didn't say goodbye loudly. He didn't promise more than he could keep. "I'll check in," he said simply. And then he did. Not every day. Not constantly. Just enough. A text the next evening. "Is the heat holding another 2 days later?" "Did the groceries last?" Nora answered cautiously at first. Short replies. Polite distance. Years of managing alone had trained her to expect help to come with conditions. But none appeared. At the diner, Adrian began stopping by for coffee once or twice a week. He never sat in Nora's section unless she insisted. When he did, he ordered simply and left generous tips without comment. The other servers noticed. "That guy seems nice," one whispered. Nora nodded. "He is." Elia waited by the window on the evenings Adrian said he might stop by. When he did, she greeted him with drawings, crayons now replacing pencil stubs. She never asked for anything. She just wanted him to see. Adrian kept every picture. One evening, Nora noticed Elia humming softly while coloring at the table. "You seem happy," Nora said. Elia looked up. "We're warm," she replied, as if that explained everything. Later that night, after Elia had gone to bed, Nora sat alone on the mattress, staring at the radiator. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to think past tomorrow, and that realization that she could felt like the biggest gift of all. Adrian learned things about Nora slowly in pieces. He never talked much about his work, only that it kept him busy. He never mentioned numbers, deals, or status. When Elia asked where he lived, he said in a tall building with too many windows. Sometimes when Elia was distracted with her coloring, Adrian and Nora talked quietly. Adrian told her about growing up with a single mother, about grocery lists trimmed down to the bare minimum, about pretending not to be hungry so his mother wouldn't feel guilty. Nora listened without interrupting, recognizing herself in every sentence. "I promised myself I'd never forget what that felt like," Adrian said one night. "Some people do." Nora nodded slowly. "I worry about that. About Elia forgetting or remembering too much." "She'll remember being loved," Adrian said. "That part stays." Nora studied him, realizing how intentional he was, never overstepping, never assuming. For the first time since Elia was born, Nora felt something unfamiliar. Trust without fear. One afternoon, Adrian brought Elia a small sketchbook. Nothing fancy, just thick paper and clean pages. Elia's eyes lit up like it was the best gift she'd ever received. She hugged it to her chest. "For me, for your stories," Adrian said. "Draw whatever you want." Later, Nora pulled him aside. "You don't have to keep doing things for her." Adrian shook his head gently. "I want to, and I'm careful not to take up space that isn't mine." Nora believed him. That evening, Aaliyah sat on the floor drawing quietly. She slid one picture toward Adrian. 3 figures stood beneath falling snow. One tall, one medium, one small. A bright shape hovered near the smallest figure's hand. "What's that?" Adrian asked. Elia pointed at it. "That's you." Adrian smiled. "Me, yes," she said seriously. "You're the warm glove." The room went very still. Nora felt her throat tighten. Adrian didn't speak right away. He looked at the drawing again, then at Elia. "I'm honored," he said finally. Elia nodded satisfied and returned to her drawing. That night, after Adrian left, Nora tucked Elia into bed. Elia clutched the old leather glove beside her pillow, not because she needed it, but because it reminded her of being seen. Mom Elia murmured sleepily, "Do we belong?" Nora smiled, brushing hair from her face. "Yes, baby, we always did." Outside, the city went on busy, imperfect, often unkind. But inside that small apartment, warmth hummed steadily through the radiator, and something deeper had taken root. A promise. And this time it wasn't going to fade with the snow. Winter didn't leave quickly in Seattle. It simply softened, snow turning to slush, wind turning from cruel to merely cold. Inside Nora's apartment, the radiator hummed steadily, now a quiet sound that had become a kind of heartbeat. Elia stopped sleeping in her coat. That alone felt like a miracle. Her drawings multiplied, pages filled with warm windows and yellow lights and tiny figures holding hands beneath skies that didn't look like they were waiting to break. She drew people the way she wanted the world to be: close, kind, unafraid. Adrian came by the way he always did, without announcing, without assuming. Sometimes he brought nothing. Sometimes he brought time, which somehow felt rarer than anything money could buy. One evening, after Elia had fallen asleep, Nora sat at the small table with a mug of tea that went untouched. Adrian stood near the window, looking down at the street below, careful as always not to fill the room with himself. "There's something I've never said out loud," Nora began. Adrian turned, giving her his full attention without interrupting. "I've been scared," she continued. "Not just of being broke, of being seen as weak. I learned early that asking for help made people think you couldn't handle your own life." Adrian nodded slowly. "My mom felt that way too." Nora swallowed. "When Aaliyah was born, I promised myself she'd never feel that shame." Her voice wavered, then steadied, then the heat went out, and I couldn't fix it fast enough. And she sat outside that restaurant. She didn't say the name. She didn't have to. Adrian moved closer but stopped short of touching her, letting the moment belong to her. "You didn't fail," he said quietly. "You stayed. You worked. You loved her. That's not failure." Nora shook her head. "It feels different when you're the one inside it." "I know," Adrian replied. "When I was a kid, I thought being hungry was my fault. Like I should have been better, quieter, less noticeable." Nora looked up. Did it change? Adrian's answer came without drama. "No. What changed was someone noticing and deciding I mattered." Silence filled the room, not empty, but full. From the bedroom came the soft sound of Elia shifting in her sleep. Nora's shoulders loosened just slightly, as if her body was learning a new shape. Adrian's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen, then frowned, not irritated, but focused. "What is it?" Nora asked. Adrian hesitated only a moment. Then he turned the phone toward her. An invitation. A glossy digital card with warm gold accents. Harbor and Pine Winter Community Evening, open doors. Local partnerships. A night of giving. Nora's breath caught. Her fingers hovered over the screen without touching it, like the glass might burn. That restaurant, she whispered. Adrian nodded once. Yes. Nora's mind flashed with a bench, with light behind glass, with a polite smile that had been final. I don't want to go, she said immediately. I don't want Elia near that place. Not ever. Adrian didn't argue. He didn't tell her she was overreacting. He didn't try to convince her with a speech. He simply sat down across from her and folded his hands. Then we don't go, he said. Not unless you choose it. Nora stared at him, searching for the catch. There wasn't one. After a long pause, she asked quieter now. Why would they do this? Community night. Adrian leaned back slightly. Sometimes places want to look warm, he said carefully without learning how to be. Nora's throat tightened. So what do we do? Adrian looked toward the bedroom door, then back at Nora. Nothing, he said, if that's what protects your peace. He paused. But if you ever want to take something back, we can. Together. Nora's hands trembled slightly around her mug. Take what back? Adrian's voice stayed calm, but something sharpened inside it. Clarity, not anger. The idea that a door gets to decide who belongs, he said. Nora didn't answer. She couldn't. Her chest felt crowded with old fear and new hope fighting for space. On the floor near the table, Elia's sketchbook lay open. One page showed a house with a big door. On the other side of that door, 3 small figures stood under soft yellow light. Nora stared at it until her eyes stung, and somewhere in the quiet between her breaths, she realized something terrifying and true. Elia wasn't just drawing pictures anymore. She was drawing a future. The next day, Nora didn't mention the invitation, not out loud, but it lived in her body the way some memories did, sitting behind her ribs like a locked drawer. She went to work, smiled at customers, refilled coffee, counted tips. She moved like someone who had learned how to perform steadiness, even when her mind was far away. That evening, Elia sat on the mattress coloring. The radiator hummed. The apartment smelled like soup. Nora watched her daughter carefully. Elia wasn't scanning the room for danger anymore. She wasn't bracing herself the way she used to, shoulders slightly up, eyes quick. She was simply there. Nora didn't know whether that made her want to cry or breathe. When Adrian arrived, he didn't bring up the invitation. He just asked Elia about her drawing. Elia held up a page filled with yellow circles. These are warm windows, she announced. Adrian smiled. How many warm windows does the world need? Elia considered very seriously. A lot. Later, after Elia fell asleep, Nora stood by the window with Adrian, the city spread beneath them like a quiet map of other people's lives. I keep thinking about that night, Nora admitted. Not what happened, but what it did to me. Adrian looked at her. Tell me. Nora swallowed. I started believing. Maybe we really didn't belong in places like that. Like belonging was something you earned by being acceptable. Adrian's eyes didn't flinch. That's a lie the world tells when it's comfortable, he said. Nora's voice dropped. I don't want Elia to grow up thinking kindness is rare. Adrian's mouth softened, not into a smile, but into something gentler. Then let's prove it isn't. Nora exhaled shakily. How Adrian didn't answer immediately. He didn't rush her into bravery. Instead, he made it smaller, safer. Not the restaurant, he said. Not yet. Just a place with warmth. A place where no one looks twice. The next evening, he took them to a small cafe tucked between a bookstore and a laundromat. The windows were fogged from heat, and the smell of bread drifted onto the sidewalk. Elia pressed her nose to the glass. This place smells happy, she announced. Inside, no one checked coats. No one whispered. No one asked questions. They slid into a booth near the window menus worn soft from use. Elia studied hers carefully. "Can I really choose anything?" Adrian nodded. "That's how menus work." Elia chose grilled cheese again. Nora chose soup. Adrian ordered coffee, and whatever dessert, Elia pointed to something simple with powdered sugar. They ate slowly, like people learning how to sit without flinching. Midway through, Nora spoke without looking up. "I'm afraid to rely on people." Adrian didn't rush to reassure her. He didn't say, "You can trust me," like trust was a switch. Instead, he said, "Then don't rely on me." He met her gaze steadily. "Let me earn trust over time." Nora's throat tightened. "You say things like you've thought about this." "I have," Adrian admitted, "because I don't want to repeat what hurt my mom." Elia swung her feet under the table, crumbs on her plate, cocoa warming her palms. She looked from Nora to Adrian, then back to her dessert, satisfied by the calm. When they stepped outside, snow began to fall again, soft and gentle this time, like a different kind of winter. Elia slipped her mittened hand into Nora's. "Mom," she said, "I like this night." Nora squeezed her hand. "Me too, baby." Adrian walked beside them unhurried. For the first time, Nora didn't feel like the future was something to survive. It felt like something they might actually reach. And that was when she realized the invitation wasn't just a card. It was a question. Would she keep avoiding the door that had once closed? Or would she carefully, responsibly, with her child protected, teach Elia the truth that mattered more than fear, that the word belong was not something a building could take? Nora didn't decide in one dramatic moment. She decided in pieces, in the way Elia slept peacefully now, in the way the radiator's hum felt like a promise kept, in the way Adrian never demanded gratitude, never took credit, never made them feel like a project. 3 days after the cafe, Nora sat at the table with the invitation open on her phone again. Elia colored beside her, humming quietly. Adrian stood near the doorway, ready to leave, as he always was, never assuming he had the right to stay. Nora looked up. "If we go—" She began, then stopped. Adrian waited. "If we go," Nora tried again, "it has to be for the right reasons." Adrian nodded. "It will be." Nora swallowed. No spotlight. No speeches about us. No photos. No turning Elia into a story. Adrian's voice was gentle but firm. "Agreed." Nora hesitated, then added, almost embarrassed, "And Elia stays with me the whole time." "Of course," Adrian said immediately. "Always." Elia looked up from her drawing. "Where are we going?" Nora's heart squeezed. She didn't want to put fear into her child's mouth. "We might visit a restaurant," Nora said softly. "But only if you feel okay." Elia tilted her head, considering. "Will it be warm?" "Yes," Nora answered. "Will you be there?" Elia asked, eyes on Nora. Nora reached out and touched her daughter's cheek. "Every second." Elia nodded, once satisfied. "Okay." The night of the event, they arrived early, not dressed to impress, not trying to disappear, just present clean coats, simple shoes, Elia's scarf wrapped snugly, her mittened hands held in Nora's. The restaurant looked exactly as Nora remembered, crystal light polished floors, the kind of warmth that used to feel like it belonged to someone else. At the entrance, the hostess recognized Adrian immediately. Her posture changed. Her voice sharpened into careful brightness. "Mr. Vale, welcome." Adrian met her gaze calmly. No anger, no performance. "Last winter," he said evenly, "a 5-year-old girl sat outside these doors in the snow." The hostess blinked. Color drained from her face. Adrian didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse in a way that would cause a scene. He spoke with clarity, like an adult who understood responsibility. "Tonight is called community," he continued. "That needs to mean something in practice, not just in marketing." The manager was summoned. Apologies followed, quick, practiced, uneasy. Adrian didn't accept apologies as an ending. "I'm not here for a refund," he said calmly. I'm here for policy. The manager's brows lifted. Policy A, warming space, Adrian said. Staff training. A clear protocol for when a child is alone outside. A partnership plan with local community services. Something that protects people. Quietly. Consistently. The room seemed to hold its breath. Nora felt Elia's hand tighten around hers. But Elia wasn't shrinking. She was watching, eyes wide, not afraid, learning. The manager nodded, swallowing. Yes, he said. We can implement that. Immediately. Adrian didn't press for humiliation. He pressed for action. Then he crouched beside Elia, making his voice soft again. Elia, he asked gently, do you want to go inside? Elia glanced at the lights, then at her mother. Nora's chest rose and fell. She nodded slowly, carefully, like placing a fragile thing on a steady table. Elia took one step forward. This time, the velvet rope wasn't a barrier. This time, the door stayed open, and as they walked in together, Nora felt something loosen inside her, not like victory, but like release. The past didn't own this place anymore. Not when the right adults finally did their job. Not when the child was protected. Not when the word belong was being returned to its rightful owner. The change didn't arrive with headlines. It arrived quietly. In the weeks after the community night, Harbor and Pine added a small, warm waiting area near the entrance. No sign announced it. No spotlight lingered. Staff received new training, simple instructions spoken plainly. If a child stood alone in the cold, the door opened. No questions first. Warmth first. Nora heard about it from someone else. A coworker mentioned it casually at the diner, that fancy place by the water. They're doing something different now. Nora didn't respond. She just nodded and wiped the counter, her hands steady. At home, the apartment stayed warm. The radiator hummed like it had always belonged there. Elia no longer slept with her coat nearby. Her shoes stayed by the door because they were shoes, not because she might need to leave in a hurry. Adrian didn't change either. He didn't start showing up more. He didn't disappear. He kept the same rhythm, checking in, listening, staying consistent. One afternoon, Elia brought home a flyer from school, an after-school art program, limited spots. She stared at it longer than usual. I like drawing, she said quietly. Adrian read the flyer carefully. He didn't pull strings for Elia alone. Instead, he funded an expansion officially quietly so more children could join. When Nora found out, she confronted him, shaken. You said you wouldn't turn us into a project. Adrian nodded. I didn't. This isn't for Elia alone. That way no one points. Nora studied him, then exhaled. You think of things I don't even know to worry about. That's okay, Adrian said. You don't have to worry about everything. Elia came home weeks later with a finished drawing, tiny yellow windows glowing against a dark page. I made the warm parts, she explained proudly. The question came on an ordinary evening. They were back at the restaurant, not for an event, not for attention. Just dinner, a small table near the window. Cocoa for Elia, steam curling upward. Outside, snow drifted gently past the glass. Elia wrapped both hands around her mug and watched the room people talking, laughing, existing without fear. Then she looked up at Adrian. Mr. Adrian, yes, Elia. She hesitated, then asked the question she'd been carrying since the night on the bench. Do I belong here? The table went still. Nora's breath caught. She reached for Elia's hand, but Adrian answered first, not rushed, not rehearsed. You don't belong because a door is open, he said calmly. Doors open because you belong. Elia considered this carefully, like she was placing it somewhere important. Nora leaned down and kissed her daughter's hair. You always belong with me, she added softly. Elia smiled, not wide, not loud, certain. When they left, the hostess opened the door herself and spoke directly to Elia. Have a warm night. Elia nodded politely. Thank you. Outside, the cold felt different. Not cruel, just winter. Nora exhaled deeply. I didn't think I could walk in here again. You didn't walk in as someone asking, Adrian replied. You walked in as someone deserving. Elia skipped a step ahead, crunching snow under her boots. She turned back suddenly. Mom, she said, can we help people one day? Nora smiled. We already are. Spring came slowly. Snow softened into rain. Rain gave way to pale sunlight that lingered longer each afternoon. The city changed its clothes, and so did Aaliyah. Her drawings filled the small apartment cities with glowing windows, people holding hands, skies that no longer looked heavy. One afternoon, Nora asked, What are you drawing now? Elia didn't look up. A place where everyone belongs. That night, after Adrian left, Nora tucked Elia into bed. The old leather glove rested beside her pillow, not because she needed it, but because it reminded her of being seen. Mom, Elia murmured sleepily. Do you think everyone belongs somewhere? Nora brushed her hair back gently. I think everyone belongs where they're seen, she said, and loved. Elia smiled, already drifting. Outside the city kept moving crowded sidewalks, bright windows, strangers passing strangers every day. But somewhere among them, a small family had learned a simple truth. Belonging doesn't come from money. It doesn't come from doors that open easily. It comes from one person noticing another and choosing not to look away. And sometimes that choice is enough to change everything. Did this story leave a lasting impression on you? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment, rate it from 1 to 10, and tap the end screen to see another heartwarming story waiting for you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, then tap the bell icon so you don't miss any new stories. Until our next story.